Welcome back to Movies TV Mad. You can follow me on Twitter at Movies TV Mad, and a very warm welcome to the New Year's Eve edition of the DC Universe Daily. Yes, today is the final day of 2022, so I thought we'd go through a very cathartic kind of journey back throughout 2022 and look back at what 2022 meant for DC film in general, and specifically as well. I don't just want to talk about the content that we got, but also the content we didn't get. I want to talk about the merger. I want to talk about James Gunn and the future. I want to save that conversation a little bit more for tomorrow, which is New Year's Day, to really look forward to see what James Gunn and Peter Safran and the new DC Universe has in store for us. So in terms of content that we got Peacemaker, the Batman, and Black Adam. Now, originally, we were supposed to get a hell of a lot more than that. And we got League of Super Pets. We'll get into that a little bit briefly as well. So, for me, I really enjoyed Peacemaker. Whatever you think of James Gunn, he put together something special and a brilliant, sophisticated sequel to his Suicide Squad movie. It was a great continuation. It literally continues straight off the bat with Peacemaker still being in a hospital. Of course, I don't want to go through a review of the whole thing again. We've been through it. We've analysed it again and again, but I really, really enjoyed it. Now, I know some people are not a fan of James Gunn's humour and the way he writes and does things, but I think in terms of the Suicide Squad and Peacemaker, you've got a little mini franchise here that personally works for me. Are there certain things I don't like? Of course there are. But there's things I don't like about the things that I absolutely love more than this anyway. So for me, Peacemaker was very successful. It did very well on HBO Max. There's no other way of spinning that. So I enjoyed Peacemaker. Then we got the Batman. The Batman is a very interesting, good Batman movie. Do I think it's great? No. I also feel there's a lot of progressive nonsense and mumbo jumbo in this movie. And if you look at it deeply and pick it apart, that element of the movie is rather problematic. The problematic elements are the Riddler. The Riddler is supposed to be you and me, men, because we know that progressive male feminists don't like us. So if you look at what he does with the Riddler, he's basically taking pot shots at men, alpha males in general. Again, I don't really want to go deeply negative on Matt Reeves. He's a gentleman. He's very polite to the fans publicly. He's also a very talented writer-director. But this is what he did there. But ultimately, what he did with his Riddler arc is show Batman that he needs to be a symbol of hope and not a symbol of vengeance. So I like that element of the movie, but it's a good Batman movie to me and not a great one. It's an interesting, very well made one. It's a 3-hour epic in a lot of ways, and it works for some people more than it does for others. It made a lot of money. It was a success. We're going to get more. Before I carry on and go on to League of Super Pets and Black Adam, I want to refer back yesterday to a portion of a Grace Randolph video I saw yesterday. Now, you know me by now. I don't have agendas against anyone. And even though I've always said that Grace Randolph's a bit like Marmite, sometimes she tastes good, and sometimes she tastes badly. I haven't done anything like that. I'm just saying that sometimes I like what she says and sometimes I don't. And also I feel she can be very toxic at times and very tactical in triggering people for her own platform to uplift it. But she said something very interesting, something that I've been saying for quite a while. Now, she was talking about James Gunn, talking about a brave, new connected universe around one story in animation, movies, TV and gaming. Now, she said this is very contradictory because of the Matt Reeves universe. and because we're still going to get a Matt Reeves universe, and some people will like the Matt Reeves universe or the Todd Phillips universe or even James's universe. So she's making the point it's not one defined DC universe when you've got these other kind of places, you know, these other franchises in DC in live action too. So she's basically calling James Gunn a liar. He's not a liar, because we were very well aware about Matt Reeves, the Batman franchise going forward, and we've known for a very long time that we were getting Joker 2, Folie à Deux. Two projects and franchises I'm actually personally really excited about. And Matt Reeves, the Batman universe, and Joker Folie à Deux, you know, if you're not happy they're happening because you just want one defined connective universe with James Gunn, it's not James's fault. These things were active before he came. Zaslav is happy with what the Batman did in the box office. He's happy with Todd Phillips. He even wanted Todd to run DC Studios. There's nothing that James can do about those two separate DC franchises. I'm sure if it was up to James, he would have one interconnected DC universe. But he can't do that. So he's just going to do his thing that in the best way that he can do it. So calling James Gunn a liar over this isn't right. But I have called him out over the teases, the comic book panel teases he constantly puts up. Now, yesterday he proved that I was right to call him out over this. And I don't call people out because I have an agenda or I hate them. I do not hate James Gunn. But I have criticised him over these out of context panel teasing. Well, yesterday or the day before, whenever he did it, he posted a Batman and Robin comic book panel, and he had to correct someone in saying it wasn't a tease. The comic book was on my coffee table and I just adore it, so I posted it. Now, I get it. There's nothing wrong with doing that, but people are going to think you're teasing your content. It's obvious, right? I can see through it all. So could it be everything that he's teased is just comic books that he loves from DC, and actually they're not teases? Maybe, maybe not. Something we'll have to wait and see. But I think wait and see about. But I do think he finally gets it, that these out of context comic book panel teasing can be very confusing to the fan and the consumer. And I applaud him for actually giving some context yesterday about why he posted that Batman and Robin panel. So then we got League of Super Pets, DC League of Super Pets. This was produced by the Rock's production company, $7. I must admit, I really, really did like this. And this actually gave me a lot more hope for Black Adam, and maybe $7 even running DC Studios. This movie kind of shows that someone at $7 understands and loves DC. When I first heard about this project and saw the trailer, wasn't excited. I thought it was going to be shit, and I didn't see what all the fuss was about. But when I saw it, it was amazing. The film opens on Krypton when Jor-El is about to send Kal-El, Superman, Clark, whatever you want to call him, to Earth. And it's beautiful, and it really is a really brilliant film. And I really enjoyed it. If I'm honest, I probably enjoyed DC League of Super Pets more than I did Black Adam, if I'm honest. So let's leap over to Black Adam. As I said in my non-spoiler review, which is pinned on my channel, so you can go and check it out on my playlist. By the way, I said this is not The Dark Knight. This is not one of the great comic book movies or DC comic book movies that we absolutely stand. But you can go to the cinema or put the Blu-ray on or the 4K. It should be reaching me very soon. Or your digital copy. Watch it, and you know, for a couple of hours, you can have a lot of fun with this movie. It looks great, it feels great, it's full of escapism, and it does take Black Adam on a really good, interesting journey, but it's not deep. But also with this film, going to the negative, you can tell that this film has had the fuck cut out of it. The true intention of this film was certainly cut out, and I think this film was supposed to be at least around half an hour longer than it ended up being. You can see that there's things cut out that would have made the film feel a bit more emotional and make sense narratively as well. So it's not the perfect movie, I had a good time with it, but it's not a film I'm going to keep on going back to and back to. Ultimately, this film didn't even make 400 million at the box office, so it didn't really, critics hated it. It didn't make a splash. This was a failure for DC, but I would say, and I think Super Pets didn't do too well at the box office either. I think it did okay. But Super Pets, I would say, is a success if you enjoyed it. The Batman was successful if you enjoyed it and it made money. And Peacemaker was successful on HBO Max and it was a well-made piece of, DC media, if you ask me. But it hasn't been a great 2022 for DC as we start going back to the really negative goings-on and events that shaped 2022 for DC. Now, if you've been following my channel all throughout the year, I cover everything that's going on with the DCEU and DC live action. I react to it every day, every morning, either on a live or on a pre-recorded video. So, I covered the breaking news that DC movies were going to be postponed this year and were. Now, I was so excited that we were going to get a multitude of DC content, live action movies this year. Now, I have to actually scratch my head and think back to what we were getting because it was a long time ago. It's been a long fucking year for me. So many things have happened to me this year. It's been very exciting within my career and let's see what happens next year. But we were supposed to have the Batman, Peacemaker, League of Super Pets. Black Adam was supposed to release not in October, but in the summer. We were supposed to get the Flash movie, Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, and there were rumours that Batgirl, because at the beginning of the year we were still getting Batgirl. Batgirl, I think, was going to be a Christmas movie and probably released this very month. We'll get to the Batgirl cancellation because I've to and froed with my opinions. I think you notice on here that I change my mind a lot about my opinions. That's okay. Sometimes I have one opinion about something, then I kind of lessen my anger over something and maybe I'm a bit more nicer about it or a bit more nastier about it. And I can flip all the time. It just depends. It's when I get more and more information, I change my mind and that may make me seem inconsistent, but I'm just honest enough and balanced enough to say, yeah, I don't think that anymore. I think this today. And maybe the next day I'll think something else. And that's okay as well. So I do flip-flop a lot. So I was very, very angry that we were going to have 4 or 5 DC movies, not including the Peacemaker series and League of Super Pets as well. And we're going to have the Batman as well. It was going to be a huge celebratory year for DC. And I think originally Shazam! Fury of the Gods was going to come out next year, which it is now again. It's flip-flop back and forth. And Aquaman and Lost Kingdom was actually going to clash its release date with Avatar: Way of the Water. The predictable box office for Avatar: Way of the Water shows you that they were right to take Aquaman and Shazam! Fury of the Gods well away from that movie. That movie could end up making just under 2 billion. It could end up making Top Gun Maverick money. By the way, the year of 2022 belongs to Tom Cruise. Just changing the subject, just as we're talking about this year, and you know I love entertainment in general, I'm going to tell you this. Top Gun Maverick and Minions: The Rise of Gru are my favourite 2 movies, pieces of entertainment of 2022. Top Gun Maverick reminded me of the experience of watching a film as a kid and a young adult and a teenager and a guy when I used to be in my 20s, of no social media, of no reactions, no spoilers, no over-analysis, because I believe social media, even though I use it a lot to talk about film, has ruined our experience of movies. Watching Top Gun Maverick, it just felt like, a real movie. Well, what's a real movie and what's not a real movie, Mick? Well, it's really hard to explain. I didn't set this YouTube channel on my Twitter at Movies TV Mad to talk about Rotten Tomatoes or the best director or the best movie. And that's what kind of fans we've become these days. When I was a kid, we just enjoyed our movies. And if we didn't like a movie, it was a shoulder shrug. There was no hate. A movie shouldn't make you angry. A TV show shouldn't make you angry. You either should like it or you shouldn't, or it's may and it's okay. Like Masters of the Universe, I don't think it's the greatest well-made movie ever, but I fucking love it. And after I came out of the cinema, I wanted to be He-Man, and we were playing Masters of the Universe in the back garden straight after. That means that movie for me was a success, not financially, but a movie is about what it means for you. A story, seeing a story, embracing a story is about what it means to you. And watching Top Gun Maverick and Minions: The Rise of Gru took me back to what it was to experience a movie that the filmmakers made efforts in entertaining us. No progressive or right-wing propaganda, no nonsense, pure entertainment. 60-year-old Tom Cruise is still the biggest movie star in the world, and there's a reason for it. And progressive Hollywood are very angry about the success of Top Gun Maverick, which makes me really, really happy. What a movie. But then we look at Minions: Rise of Gru. I'll get back to DC, please don't leave. But I just want to say this, because for me, now Illuminations, if that's how you pronounce the word of the studio, but basically the studio who owns Gru and the Minions is the best animation house in the world and in Hollywood. They have taken over Disney. Basically, they're doing what Disney used to do when they used to make great entertainment, and WB Looney Tunes used to do when I was a kid. They've taken that and brought it kicking and screaming to the 21st century. All kids love the Minions. Name me one character right now, Disney character, that kids are going mad about. There isn't one. Disney have been left behind, so congratulations to Tom Cruise and everyone who was involved with Top Gun Maverick and the people over at that studio whose name I've already forgot, who did Minions: Rise of Gru. It was absolutely so pure and entertaining. And so I forgot where I was now in terms of DC, but so we were talking about Black Adam, and then we were talking about the postponed movies. So already you've got all these postponed movies. It's very, very messy. And if you remember my content, I became very obsessive about telling you there was a deeper reason. And there was a debate within DC fandom about, was it the VFX and, COVID and the VFX delays and all of that? And I was calling bullshit on that. But that wasn't the only negative situation going in the year of 2022 for DC, because many, many headlines were being released about Ezra Miller. A couple of years before, we found out that he allegedly attacked a woman in Iceland. And more stories were coming out and rumours were flying. And nobody knew, because of these stories coming out, fact or fiction, I think a lot of them are factual, by the way, what was going to happen to the Flash movie. So we put that there, because that was simmering, and nobody really knew if we'd ever actually see the Flash movie. Because the Flash movie during the Hamada era was supposed to be the big thing that changed everything. It was the biggest movie. So it was an interesting situation. Then we got the Discovery Warner Media merger. Again, that changed the direction they were going to go in. And nobody really knew what David Zaslav, the then CEO of Discovery, was going to do with this huge mammoth of a studio, Warner Brothers, and what direction DC was going to go in. David told us that he felt that Superman and Batman and Wonder Woman are monolithic characters and need to be front and center in any future DC movies. And there were rumors he was going to make huge changes and remove people. He removed a lot of people. And Sarnoff, Toby Emmerich, pretty much the whole structure of the company has changed. But we also found out that Warner Brothers was so badly run that they have a lot of debt, and he needs to raise around $3 or $4 billion. So a lot of people have lost their jobs. We then suddenly, shockingly, found out this year that the Batgirl movie that was supposed to be released on HBO Max was cancelled. Also, at the same time, we were told that Blue Beetle would be released in movie theatres because originally Blue Beetle was going to be released on HBO Max. What's interesting about this, was Blue Beetle made for streaming? Is the budget for that movie meant for a streaming quality movie? Sometimes streaming movies like on Netflix or Prime or, really look good enough to be in cinema. So it may not be a problem for it. I suppose we'll wait and see what we get, because we're getting Blue Beetle next year, or we're supposed to be getting Blue Beetle next year. How can we trust them anymore when they keep on moving release dates of their movies? And it's not just what was being done prior to Zaslav, it's happened, with Zaslav on board as well. And so the cancellation of Batgirl was very, very messy and really upset many people within the fandom and journalists and a lot of progressives as well, because the casting of a Latino Batgirl was very important to progressives. There was some very kind of progressive pieces of casting in this film. Also very toxic was that Leslie Grace and the directors of Batgirl didn't know that their movie was being shelved. They weren't told in advance by David Zaslav. He faced a lot of questions. He defended the decision by saying he only wants to put up quality for DC and WB, and he wants to protect the DC brand. Now, the decisions he's made recently calling to question if he genuinely is protecting the DC brand, but I can really argue that the decisions he's made are actually defending the DC brand, so I could be saying some controversial things in the next few minutes. So basically, Twitter was full of people being really angry about the shelving of Batgirl. Ultimately, I didn't lose much sleep over it, but the treatment of Leslie Grace and the directors was disgusting. And if you were a Henry Cavill fan and you thought, her movie's dead now, you were about to get your lungs dished to you, because the same thing was going to happen to your man. So, postponed movies, a merger, the shelving of Batgirl. And then we knew that they were looking for a new leader to lead DC live action, because there were rumours for months that Walter Hamada was on the way out. But we'll get back to that, because the Ezra Miller situation was creeping up, and Zaslav and his people, Mike Adby and Pam, no, it's not Mike Adby, it's Mike DeLuca and Pam Adby, always get them mixed up, went to Ezra Miller and made it absolutely clear to him if his behaviour didn't stop, then his movie would be shelved like Batgirl. The Flash movie is so important to Ezra that he's behaved ever since, and less stories are coming out. Because prior to that, Ezra thought the movie was coming out whatever he did, and he didn't care. He was sticking his finger out to the world. He was really rebelling. So lots of things were coming out about Ezra, alleged, religious cults, his treatment of women, it was absolutely terrible. The articles we've read out this year, and you can go back to the videos, we don't need to go through it again, but he realised his movie was going to be shelved, and he started to behave himself. So there started to be lots of rumours about who was going to be the new head of DC. Dan Lin was a name that came out early, and I'll never understand what happened there. Now, apparently, he decided not to do the gig. I think he was probably wise not to do the gig, and I think probably he realised that he wouldn't be in total control, and I don't think he wanted to deal with the Matt Reeves universe and the Todd Phillips universe. I think that's what the problem was for Dan Lin. He probably looked at it in a different way. So interesting. Now, because Mike DeLuca and Pam Adby were brought in by Zaslav to run Warner Brothers Pictures, because Mike DeLuca has experience with comic books and he understands that world, Mike DeLuca was considered as a potential, head chair of DC Studios. And he wanted what he did. He looked into commissioning a Man of Steel 2, and actually brought in Stephen Knight, the Peaky Blinders creator, to write a Man of Steel sequel script with Brainiac. Very exciting. He wanted to keep the Snyder actors, maybe even bring back Zack Snyder. That's the rumor. We'll never know if that's true. But something happened very, very quickly, because those decisions were being made, and it was clear it was Mike DeLuca who ratified the decision to bring back Henry Cavill as Superman and allow him to be in that post-credit scene of Black Adam. So what went wrong? What went wrong was the box office for Black Adam. Once the box office for Black Adam became so bad, it was David Zaslav who decided, I don't think Mike DeLuca should run DC Studios. I don't think bringing back Zack Snyder and keeping these, Snyderverse actors and bringing back Henry Cavill is the way to go, because he didn't uplift this movie. And he's thinking, surely, if he's that popular as Superman, that should be a thing. Whether or not Zaslav was correct about that, we will never know. It's very difficult to understand the mechanics of why a movie succeeds or not. I mean, try explaining how Aquaman made $1 billion straight after Justice League that flopped. I mean, no one can explain the mechanics of that. I mean, for me, Aquaman's a great movie, but its success is absolutely shocking to this day, to me as well. But it made the money. It'd be very interesting what the sequel does, because we have the problem, the elephant in the room, of Amber Heard. And so, so basically I think the failure of Black Adam changed the mentality of the studio, and especially David Zaslav. It was announced that James Gunn and Peter Safran will be co-chairs of the new DC Studios. And James Gunn was making lots of announcements, loads of teases, as I mentioned earlier on the video. And James Gunn has a vision for DC Universe. We don't know exactly what that vision is. Semi-reboot, full reboot. I've told you before, I think we're delving into the multiverse. It's a multiverse strategy, but slightly different to Walter Hamada's, and I'm going to stick with that theory. So he wants one story in TV, cinema, gaming, and animation. It's a way to make loads of money if it works, but this is the very year where Top Gun Maverick and Minions killed it at the box office, and it hasn't been a great year for superhero movies. Yes, they've made money. 2 or 3 MCU movies are on the most made list of box office, but not one of them reached $1 billion. Top Gun Maverick did. Be very interesting if Mission Impossible next year beats the cape movies, the superhero movies, yet again. That will tell a very, very interesting story. And so what we've got here is a year of indecision, making one decision, but something, the bringing back of Henry Cavill was interesting and exciting. It did give me cause for concern, as well as celebrating the situation. Putting the John Williams theme over that sequence was another controversial moment that divided the fandom yet again. And I think things like that kind of made Zaslav understand that this is not going to work. We just need to, we need to do our own thing here, start again, because this Snyder thing is never going to go away. So I think all these things made his mind up. So yes, they brought Henry Cavill back, and then James Gunn came in and, they decided not to go with Henry. I've spoke about how bringing Henry back and then getting rid of him isn't very good. It isn't very nice. It shouldn't be the way it's handled. But on the other side of it, I kind of understand why they're making these decisions. Now, it doesn't mean the decisions they're making will pay fruition, but without actually seeing who they're going to replace Henry with and who's going to play Batman and if Gal's coming back as Wonder Woman, these are things we've got to look forward to next year. So that was your 2022. A very weird, interesting, disastrous year for DC, where 2 out of their 3 cinematic movies did well. What am I talking about? 2 out of their 3. Obviously, Peacemaker wasn't in cinema, so Peacemaker was successful. The Batman was successful in cinemas when the pandemic was still a thing earlier on in 2022. Don't forget that. And obviously, Black Adam was a failure. And, League of Super Pets was very enjoyable. A bit of a weird year for DC cinematically and what out of the content that we had, but it was okay. The Batman was successful, Black Adam wasn't. Basically, as inconsistent as we've been since 2013's Man of Steel. Some things work, some things don't. And it was a thing that Zaslav identified straight away as he came in. So Hamada was always going to lose his job. He would pay for the inconsistency in the box office and in his decision making. But to be fair towards Hamada, he was never given an opportunity for us to see if his multiverse strategy was going to work. Personally, there were problems within that multiverse strategy already, because it was still the DCEU, but in a new timeline with kind of a new way of doing things. So you were still going to divide the fandom. And the DC universe is still going to divide the fandom. And I said it many times this year. Unless you take the whole thing, burn it, and start again, and give people a chance to see something new, and give them the opportunity to see if they're going to like it and if they're going to embrace it. Now, of course, even that, you're still going to have the Snyder fans shouting from the rooftops, "This ain't as good as what Zack did. That ain't as good a Batman as Ben or as good as Superman as Henry." That's never going to change. It doesn't mean you don't make bold and brave decisions. So, I think what James Gunn is doing here is very, very similar to what Hamada was doing, but making different decisions. It could be a brand new universe, I don't know, but we do know now, it's absolutely for sure, Matt Reeves' Batman is nothing to do with this brand new DC universe. But this is an interesting thing. This is what could change that. If this is a multiversal strategy, that means that Matt Reeves' the Batman could actually cross over to the new DC universe, which kind of would make it part of the new DC universe. Interesting, isn't it? Think about it. Now, he's denied that Matt Reeves, the Batman, is going to be his Batman. So, but with a multiversal situation, all these characters can cross over at any time. So I do definitely believe that we're going with the multiversal strategy. So I want to leave it there for today. And tomorrow I want to have these conversations about what could happen in 2023. Because tomorrow, excitingly, is 2023. What we do know for next year is that we are getting Shazam, Fury of the Gods. We are getting the Flash movie, which was supposed to be a huge deal originally. Blue Beetle, which some people think is the launch pad for the new DC universe and some people don't. And then at the end of the year, we get Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. So it's a big year for DC. A word of advice though, for those of you planning to boycott next year's DC movies, those films failing confirms that what Zaslav is doing, appointing Gunn and Safran to start a new DC universe, is the right thing to do. What would confuse their narrative would be if those films were actually successful. That would absolutely confuse them and maybe even change their plans to no end, because Zaslav's very reactive. I doubt that would be the case, but it would be funny to see them panicking if these movies next year actually succeed. But I would imagine that at the end of the day, they're going to do what they're going to do, whatever happens next year. And I think they're pretty confident, as we all are, that next year's movies aren't going to do too well. But we'll wait and see, because I'm going to go to the cinema and enjoy them. I'm a DC fan. I'm a movie fan. But the movie and entertainment industry is in a very hard position. A little bit because of COVID, and a little bit because of the progressive politics that have been force-fed to us within entertainment. And the culture war is everywhere. It's poisoning everything. Conversations on social media, and it's poisoning our beautiful, once beautiful, entertainment industry. We need to get back to enjoying things. And when we don't like things, we don't like them. We just move away from them and we don't talk about them. This is a really different environment, everyone, that we live in the way we can talk about movies. I think too many people talk about entertainment instead of consuming it. So turn your TV on. Put whatever you put on to watch a piece of entertainment. Go to the cinema. Enjoy what you want to enjoy, and don't get so angry so much about your entertainment. This has been the New Year's Eve edition of the DC Universe Daily. This is my final DC Universe Daily, my final show of 2022. I've enjoyed this year. I've enjoyed bringing videos to you, going live, doing pre-recorded stuff. I've got big plans for the channel in the future, so please stay with me. And if you're new, please subscribe. But whoever you are, whether you like me, love me, loathe me, or hate me, thank you for being part of my very, very little channel. So remember to like, share, subscribe. I am Mick, your host with the most. Just ask your girlfriends and your wives. And until I see you again, goodbye, au revoir, auf Wiedersehen. Have a very happy New Year's Eve and a wonderful new year. Of course, I'll be wishing you the same thing tomorrow. So see you again soon. Bye-bye.